Every evening, Dave would get a motion alert on his driveway security camera. The vibration on his phone would interrupt whatever show he was watching as he checked to make sure it was nothing serious. And every evening, he saw the same thing. A little boy, Quinn, was rolling across the driveway on his balance bike as part of the family's daily walk. It would have been easy to get annoyed, especially at this time, sitting there on the couch anticipating the daily alert, ready to jump into action to shoo the little boy and his family away. Preemptively, he could have started patrolling his driveway in the early evening, ready to shake his fist at the child and yell to get off my drive. Cars could have been parked as a deterrent, or any number of obstacles could have been put up to block Quinn's route. But Dave didn't do that. Instead, under the cover of darkness, Dave decided to draw out a chalk racetrack for the boy to follow. On the next evening's video, you can see Quinn's hesitation. He looks at the track, then at his mother, then back at the track, wondering, is this for me? Can I actually ride around the course? After her encouragement, he follows the arrows around the racetrack not once but twice. But Dave didn't stop there. When it rained and washed away the track, Dave drew another one with new elements for the boy to follow. He even began refining his technique to maximize the space, incorporating S-bends and back straights to give Quinn more of a challenge. He wrote words of encouragement around the course. In the videos, you watch Quinn transition to a pedal bike, and then you see other members of the neighborhood, a man pushing a stroller, a young girl and some older teenagers, all enjoying the racetrack. Quinn's dad, Josh, commented, "It's been amazing. Just that we can be part of something like that we can see the good side of humanity. It feels good." To brighten up the neighborhood and to improve the life of a little boy at this difficult time, all it took was a bit of chalk and a bit of effort. But underlying that decision that Dave made is an attitude. It's the way that Dave approaches the world. The end of his driveway does not represent a line to be defended and protected. Instead, he recognizes the power that he has to make someone else's life better, to help another person, and to provide some joy for a complete stranger. For the last however many years, the narrative has been of people, society, and our world becoming more selfish, more self-absorbed, less concerned with the fate of other people. That narrative suggests that after the repeated motion alerts, Dave would build a fence rather than a racetrack. This moment of COVID-19 has come as an important corrective. The overwhelming message of this disease has been to remind us that we are all interconnected, that our fate lies with each other, that ultimately, through our actions, we possess the power to save or to harm our fellow person. The advice has been clear. To slow the spread of this disease and protect ourselves, the primary instructions have been increased hand washing and hygiene measures, staying at home where possible, and wear a mask. When we look back at this period of history, I imagine that one of the defining images will be a child's face with only the eyes visible and a mask covering their nose and mouth. The most important action we can take against this pandemic is to wear a mask. But the fascinating thing about the wearing of a mask is that it does not protect the wearer. It is about ensuring that you don't infect anyone else. We don't wear a mask to save our own life. We wear a mask to save the lives of others. We cannot know definitively whether we do or do not have this terrible disease. And so we take this precaution to ensure that if we have it, we do not transmit it to anyone else. We wear a mask to honor the Jewish commandment of pikuach nefesh, saving a life. And with a contagious disease, in wearing a mask, we fulfill the words of Talmud that if you save one life, it is as though you saved the entire world. We have the power to save. But this pandemic has also exposed the flip side of this, the fact that we unfortunately all possess the power to harm another person. When I have been going out, my primary concern and fear has been other people. I have been annoyed by people walking the wrong way down one-way aisles. I have been concerned when hearing a cough or a sneeze. And I have been angered when seeing people entering a store without a mask. In the midst of this pandemic, I am being trained to fear the other. I could contract this dreadful disease because of something that someone else does, or more likely doesn't do. But herein lies the paradox. We fear and avoid each other, and at the same time, we yearn for each other. What have we missed most during this pandemic? Social interaction, connection, and simply being together with other people. We took our various communities for granted, and in this pandemic, we have lost the opportunity to interact in the ways that we would want. Other people are our greatest existential threat, but they are also our salvation. In this moment, we have been forced to confront the fact that we are all interconnected. All of our actions, our choices, and our inaction affect other people. And this relationship is not simply with the people in our neighborhoods and communities. It stretches throughout the country and around the world. The actions of people there affect us here, and the ripples of our actions spread across the globe. The myth suggested that we could build walls and borders that would be strong enough to protect us from them and to keep us safe from all external threats. They had imagined that we could isolate ourselves in bubbles where we would be immune to the consequences of the actions of others and where we could act without consequence. And there had developed a sense of our own greatness, that in the face of challenges, disease, and hardship, while others might suffer, we would always be protected. The lie of this myth has been well and truly exposed by this pandemic. We can no longer hide from the consequences of our actions and inactions. We have been forced to confront the power that we have to bring blessing or curse, to do good or do evil, to bring light or extend the darkness. It is no accident that in this moment, American society has been called to account for the systemic racism and inequality that has always been here, deeply seated in the very foundation of this country. In this awakening, we have come to see our interconnectedness that much more clearly, and our responsibility for one another has been brought to the fore. It is inconceivable to me and deeply shameful that it has taken until now for me to truly see how I, as a white male, have benefited from the very system that I find abhorrent. I have always stood in horror at the acts of racism I see every day, but I have remained a bystander. And despite the common phrase, a bystander is anything but innocent, I fail to truly see the suffering. I fail to recognize where I benefited at someone else's expense. I fail to hear the cry of my fellow person. None of us are immune to racism. It is the other and even deadlier disease blighting our country, and it requires a cure just as urgently. My passive, non-racist beliefs and ideals were woefully inadequate and in need of immediate adjustment. In our connectedness, I now see so much more clearly. It's not their problem. It's my problem. It's our problem. I hope that the realization of this moment is that just like anti-Semitism is not a Jewish problem, but a societal one that we all must address, so too the issue of racial injustice and the suffering of the black community is not their issue, but it is our issue, all of us. This is not one of the times to quote from the Torah and suggest that because we were slaves in Egypt, we who know the heart of a slave must act. Because this time, it's not about our unique calling as Jews. The obligation to act, to fight injustice, and to save lives is not simply a Jewish obligation. It is a human responsibility. At its core, it is the very essence of what it means to be human. On this day, as we celebrate the birthday of the world, As we begin 10 days of reckoning with all of us called to account for what we have done and not done over this past year, I believe there is one question that this moment is asking of us. The first question, the first human question, posed at the very beginning of the Torah. A question to which we already know the answer. As humanity takes its first steps out of the Garden of Eden, we ask our first question. The question that we are still asking of ourselves today, and unfortunately, all too often, failing to answer. In the aftermath of Cain murdering Abel, God calls him and asks, "Where is Abel, your brother?" And Cain responds with the question, "Am I my brother's keeper?" We know, and have always known, the answer that God wants to hear. Yes, yes I am, yes we are, 100 times yes, we are responsible for one another. It should be that simple. We know it isn't. As we are called to account this High Holy Day season, I believe that we are being asked one question by God and by this moment. Are you your fellow human's keeper? Have you been their keeper? Will you commit to being their keeper, their protector, their salvation? We humans have always possessed within us the ability to do good or evil, to help others or to hurt them, to bring blessing or curse. This moment has brought that potential, both positive and negative, into sharp focus. We can reflect on what we have done up to this point, but we cannot change it. Instead, we can make a commitment about how we will behave moving forward. What will we do to protect others and to be amongst those who save them, save the world, and by extension, then save ourselves? In relation to COVID-19, if we want to be our fellow humans' keeper, the answer is simple. Wear a mask. It really is that easy. Today, we do not express our affection for someone we meet by shaking their hand or giving them a warm embrace. Instead, we show our affection by the fact that we cover our nose and mouth. We show that we care for them because we wear a mask that protects them, and we honor the sanctity of their life by taking this precaution. With the issue of racial injustice, it may seem more complicated, but it isn't. In the words of Ibrahim X. Kendi, there is no neutrality in the racism struggle. The opposite of racist isn't not racist, it is anti-racist. To be our fellow humans' keeper, we must actively join the fight, not as their fight, but as our fight. We should be organizing the protests and attending. We should be writing the letters and advocating. We should be hosting the book groups and learning. We have to be on the front line, not as their struggle, but as our struggle. As Kendi says, being an anti-racist requires persistent self-awareness, constant self-criticism, and regular self-examination. It's an appropriate endeavor for this High Holy Day season and throughout the year. And then, there are the daily non-specific moments when we are asked, are you your fellow human's keeper? This is about the way that we view and treat one another. It's about the little things and the big things, the small gestures we can make to help another person, and the larger actions that help to improve another person's lot or life. Do we stand at the end of our driveway shouting at a 4-year-old boy for riding their bike across our stretch of pavement? Or do we draw them a racetrack to increase their enjoyment and fun? At the end of an article about Dave Quinn and the racetrack, the author wrote, "There are a lot of great dads out there, but the true measure of a man is not how he raises his own kids, it's how he raises the village." For us, this year, and every year since the beginning of humanity, the measure of a person has been the way in which they answer the question, are you your fellow human's keeper? There is only one acceptable answer. Yes. Yes. 100 times yes. This new year, what will your answer be?